No Other Life presents Upstaged. Speaking Out. I hope you follow me on social media because I think I say some interesting things, but the reason that I feel that way today is because in the spring of 2024, you would have seen a lot of posts, which of course you can visit in their archival state if you haven't seen that as it was happening. At that point in time, I was going through a variety of therapy techniques in order to preserve my voice. It's kind of funny right now. My voice sounds a bit funny. It's simply a cold or seasonal allergies, and unrelated to that content. There's no need to worry. But when I was doing this training, it was in recognition of the fact that one of the things that will happen to many people living with Parkinson's is a lack of voice. People will begin to get smaller in voice, just like everything else that contracts in. People that get a smaller posture and smaller movements, and that's the nature of Parkinson's, sadly. And because I prize my voice so highly, because I love podcasting and talking to all of you who are there listening elsewhere, because I need to do a great amount of teleconferencing in my life, because I was a voice major and singer and have always needed the voice that was within me. I want to make sure that it is there when I grow older. I want to make sure that I can still speak out when I want to. Because as I know from seeing those around me who are living with Parkinson's disease, that's not taken for granted. It's not an assumption we can make that we will always have voice. And I see people struggling to produce voice, to make sound. And I realize that for many people, it's getting to be too late. I mean, if you can still make sound, I'm sure that you can still improve it. But for me here now, even when I sound like I do now, I need to be sure that I will continue to hopefully not regress too seriously. This is a therapy methodology that is organized through something called the Parkinson Voice Project, and I'm a proud member of that group of alumni now, and they do exceptional work. So if that is something that you need in your life, please check them out, make a donation, or enroll yourself in that sort of training somewhere in your neighborhood or online. And they have not told me to do any of this promotion, but I really, really believe in their cause now, having seen what it was able to do for me, who had just finished season 1 of a podcast, was getting ready to do season 2. But today I'm talking to you about speaking out in a different way. This is the self-advocacy lecture of the series, because it's totally true that if you don't speak out for yourself, if you don't defend yourself, defend the things that you require, you're not going to get them. People are not going to instinctively say, oh, I remember hearing years ago that Rick is someone living with Parkinson's, so he probably needs this or that. Even when people mean well, they're either not going to remember, especially if you're doing well in your progression of the disease, or they're going to feel awkward to bring it up or think that they're going to insult you to offer some sort of accommodation. But I'm starting to find that if you ask, if you make a request for some sort of accommodation, people will help you. People will help you. And that's a great thing to learn early on. And it's never been a strong suit of mine. I've always lived a life that says, "Oh, what are you talking about? I can do that." Or, "No, don't get up. I'll do it myself." And over time, that's going to become a bit more difficult for me. I know that to be the case. But that doesn't make it any easier to navigate through the woods right now to get me toward the point where I'm actually able to be comfortable with that sort of realization, if you will. So, for the purposes of this particular episode, I want to talk about one instance of this. And it's, I sometimes try to be generic, but this is a complete personalized story, and I hope that you draw something from it to apply to your own living. I work at a very large university, and from time to time I call it that, and sometimes I call it Boston University. And the reason that I do that is because that's its name. And there are commencements, and everybody who is ever a part of that school shows up and needs to attend, needs to have certain accommodations of their own. They need to be directed where to go, and so on and so forth. It's only been in the last few years that I have been a part of this. And last year was one of the first, maybe the first, I don't recall. And I was a little nervous about it because it's a long day. It's a lot to do, a lot of standing, potentially a lot of fine motor skills if you're on the detail that is checking people off or having people sign in. You might be doing a lot of tricky and fast-paced things at a desk. And for whatever reason, I ended up being a guy that stood out on the street and right in a vestibule, back and forth throughout the day. And as the graduates arrived, I would tell them to wait, and then I would direct them when I was given word on my phone that it was time to let them go to the next step. And then more would come in, and some were early, some were late. And my job was to use this here booming voice as best as I could and try to make a smile with my frozen face as best as I could. There were a few things that were not entirely Parkinson's friendly, but I was up for it. I was excited, and I wanted to be a part of the fun. And as these students started to come through, I realized some of them I had taught early in their tenure there as students, and some of them had worked for us. And it was really a nice experience, one that I will remember for its own sake for some time. Now, as we were coming toward the next year's graduation exercises, and I was a little nervous, like I had been the previous year, but for somewhat different reasons in some cases, but others were the same. It's, how am I going to be able to do? What if it's really hot? What if I wish that I had certain things that I can't really keep in my pockets and didn't have a space to put out a backpack, things like that. When the anxious mind gets going, there's very little you can do to calm it. So I knew that I wasn't going to back out. I knew that I wasn't going to attempt to get some sort of a waiver or try just to go under the radar and never show up. I signed up. Now, about a week beforehand, as it was clear to me that we were going to be soon trained on our particular tasks for commencement day, it occurred to me, hey, why don't you speak out for yourself? I never thought of that. I have never been one who speaks out for himself. It's just not in my nature. So, what did I do? I knew the two people in charge. I've been working with them combined for, a decade and a half if you add up all of our times together. And I thought, why wouldn't I do this? So I just wrote a message. All it said was, "Dear so-and-so and so-and-so, I'm looking forward to the commencement. Last year, I was assigned this particular job out on the sidewalk, and it really suited me well. There are some things that, with my Parkinson's symptoms, may not be my strengths, but I would love to request if I could do this again." I was more eloquent than that. And I made sure to close by saying, if this can't work out or there's some other person assigned, anything like that, I'm open to whatever you offer and I'm ready for the challenge. And pretty shortly, I received a message that said, "Great, you're the bouncer out on the street." And we kind of had this quick little interaction with these niceties and emojis, and I felt really good. And I felt good enough that I told people that I know. I told my wife. I thought about it. I'm telling you. Obviously, this made an impression on me. And it's not because I didn't expect that I would be getting the assistance that I need. Not at all. And it's not that I thought it was some kind of a surprise that someone would extend an arm of kindness. No, certainly not at my school where everybody is really nice to everybody. That's just not going to be the way. But it still was special. It still was unique for me. For me. Because I don't do that much. And so as I've learned to speak out, I've also learned to speak up. And I'm trying. And it's a big deal to overcome that, but I'm trying. So the piece that I am thinking of today that I want to present to you actually has nothing to do with university commencement. But it does have to do with speaking up for oneself. And at some point in time, I will definitely dig into it deeper because it was one of the most meaningful and cathartic pieces that I've ever written for myself. And it comes from the album dedicated to my mom. It's called Blue Wing, and it is a part of that story in which a person, this was my mom, stands up for herself and says, despite everything that's going on bad right now, I did the best that I could. I did everything that I could do for you, who in this imagery is that person's partner. Don't I deserve something in return? Don't I deserve that? Didn't I earn your compassion? And so although this isn't the exact same story to be told here, it really came to my mind, this concept of didn't I earn compassion? And it's not exactly compassion that someone said, okay, you can volunteer out on the sidewalk instead of handing out award lanyards or something. No, that's not what I'm saying, but it's still that same headspace to come to. And so I offer to you today Assurance from the album Blue Wing. In this series, there will be far more to be heard from this album, Blue Wing, but that itself was the track called Assurance. And if you like that track, it is available on my Bandcamp. You can go over there or visit rickseahome.com. You'll find the latest news, archived social media, and you can get any of the music we're talking about on this series. Upstaged and the No Other Life project in general are independently conceived of and managed by me, Rick Seahome, ad-free and without interruption for all listeners, and I appreciate any support. Please subscribe, leave a review, and spread the word with real people. That's the number one way you can keep this going. Friends, you have no other life, and it's the grandest improv session of them all. Own what you bring to the scene, and share it with all whom you meet.